David Brewster here with a new episode of Soloing Secrets, and this is Neal Schon, yet another guitar legend. And definitely, I've been a Neal Schon and Journey fan since I was a teenager in high school. You know, he's had a huge influence on me, for sure. And Neal first appeared on the scene around 1968. He eventually joined forces with Santana around 1971, and Neal was only 17 when he joined Santana's band. And I've always loved the story that Eric Clapton desperately wanted Neal and Derek and the Dominoes. But at 17, Neal told Eric Clapton no, and it's one of the few people that actually said no to Eric Clapton. That's unbelievable. But then eventually left Santana's band, formed Journey. Journey's released something like 16 studio albums. Neal's released 10, solo albums with his own name. Not to mention working with Bad English and Hardline and Jan Hammer, Sammy Hagar. There's a whole bunch of people he's worked with in his career. So definitely, Neal's a legend. So here we go. So just like we've done in other episodes in the Soloing Secrets series, it's always a good idea when you're looking at a specific player to look at their musical influences. And you can do that with bands too. Look at a band's, list of influences. But with a guitarist, if we're zooming in on a guitarist and really doing a deep dive, it's always beneficial to check out who influenced them when they were younger. So here's some of Neal's elusive, musical influences. A lot of blues, a little bit of jazz, and some rock too. But here you go. And as far as some of the people that Neal's worked with in his career, either in the studio or on stage or in a band or whatever, aside from Journey and Bad English and some of the groups and artists I mentioned in the intro, there's a whole bunch of people that Neal's either recorded with or toured with or maybe just a one-off performance or something like that. And there's a lot. But one of my favorites is some of the stuff he did with Paul Rodgers back in the 90s. The Muddy Waters Blues album. That Muddy Waters Blues album is phenomenal. It's got David Gilmour on there and Brian Setzer. Neal Schon, Slash is on there. There's a ton of players on there. Steve Miller's randomly on there. But he also released like an EP. It's called the Hendrix Set. And it's Paul Rodgers singing and Neal Schon just shredding, Hendrix and jamming. There's a great version of Manic Depression on there. But anyway, here's an image with some of the people that Neal's worked with in his career. And as far as Neal's actual soloing secrets, the things that he typically likes to do when he picks up a guitar and he plays a lick or a fill or a guitar solo or something like that, and he has blues influences. So there's this blues energy, throughout his, playing style. Everything has authority and conviction, which comes from blues. There's also jazz influences. So Neal's not afraid to dip into some modal tonalities or maybe chromatic ideas and some kind of jazzier, sounds and licks and stuff. And then there's the rock influences too. So he's not afraid of grabbing like a big bend with sustain and feedback and open string pull-off licks and fast runs and stuff and aggressive, rock playing too. So definitely Neal's the package player. And here's an image with his elusive soloing secrets. And just as a reminder, I did have a lesson in Guitar Player magazine. This would have been August 2017. And it was basically a tribute to Neal Schon. You can see it right there, Melodic Journey. And there's actually a segment in this lesson, in this episode, that's going to revisit some of the concept or idea that I had in this Guitar Player lesson. But it's pretty in-depth, so I don't know if you've seen this lesson, but we are going to hit, something that I had published in Guitar Player magazine. And that was, once again, August 2017 issue with Melodic Journey. Just a heads up. So the music and ideas shared in this episode actually came from 3 different Journey albums, and I was a little overwhelmed with 16, Journey studio albums, 10, Neal Schon solo albums, not to mention all the other stuff, Santana and Bad English and Hardline and Sammy Hagar and all that stuff. So it's, I was kind of looking through and listening, to some of his music, and then I just locked on to some things. So we are going to target, some specific areas in Neal's style, mainly his melodicism and playing melodically, in those anthem kind of guitar solos where they, you can sing along or whatever. And you could definitely hear a vocalist singing, some of his licks and ideas, but he's typically performing them on the guitar. They're just that melodic where they could be a vocalist part or a violin or a saxophone, but it's Neal's guitar. So anyway, here we go. With the opening jam, that was basically me playing around with the song Majestic, the opening track from Evolution. And Majestic's awesome. It's super melodic. And it starts with this kind of A, D over A kind of chord riff. There is like this kind of mysterious, intro before this, but then eventually it starts hitting this. And then right there, you're going to move all the way up here, and you're going to grab this F sharp, and we're bending that to G sharp, up a whole step. And it's super melodic, very expressive too. Like that. So it's just a handful, like 4 notes right there, but he's saying so much with those, 4 notes. And then revisit that first melody again. And then you're going to move to another position right here. Like that. Like this. And then after that F sharp with vibrato, you're going to move up to this B, bend that up a whole step. And you got that little pull off right there. And then you're going to grab that F sharp again, and you're doing... And then he's playing with that E, F sharp, and G right there, and kind of bending, creatively there. And then you're making your way all the way up to that high B way up there. And almost kind of southern rock bend there, almost like Skinner or something. And then you're doing this. And at the end, you're way up there, cramped. Your fingers are all cramped together, and you're grabbing that bend that only dogs can hear way up there. And then that. And then just end with an E power chord right there. So that's a very expressive guitar solo. It's definitely a Neal Schon melodic statement out the wazoo. I mean, that's super, super expressive. So check out Majestic. That's a classic right there. So now I'm going to revisit some of the info that was in the guitar player lesson. And in that lesson, Melodic Journey, I was basically talking about Neal's modal pockets and how he'll basically grab a pocket of notes, and then as the chord progression behind him changes, he just kind of cycles and targets what he needs in that little pocket. And he does this like an expert. He actually has done this a lot, and you can kind of see it in certain solos and in certain songs. But let me show you what I'm talking about. So I'm actually going to move this to another key. That way, if you have seen the guitar player lesson, now at least I'm showing this kind of in a different location or a different key. It's going to incorporate some different chords and notes, of course. In the guitar player lesson, I showed it in G. We're going to move that up a whole step. So now we're going to start in A, or A major. So just think A major, right? And we're just going to grab this 1 octave A major scale, or Ionian, right there. Right? So there's A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, and A. Right? That's Ionian, big time. And your root notes right there. Now, aside from A major, which you could totally use that little pocket of notes for melodies and licks and phrases over an A major chord. But in that same location, if we change chords behind you, let's play F sharp minor now. We're going to keep that same pocket of notes. Now what happens? Right? Now it's Aeolian. Now it's F sharp Aeolian suddenly. Change. What about B minor? So what if we change it to a B minor chord, or B minor 7? Well, now that little pocket of notes is going to sound like B Dorian, believe it or not. Basically kind of changing, the function or role of the scale. What about D major? Or maybe like a D major, sharp 11. If we use that same pocket of notes, now it's going to sound like D Lydian right there. it's, a D, D major or whatever. What about E7, like kind of a bluesy, E7 chord? That same pocket of notes now is going to sound like E mixolydian. So it's really interesting to just, kind of stay put in one area and kind of see what happens as the chords change behind you. So what this is kind of teaching you is don't let the chord progression push you around. Push your ideas through the chord progression. For a song example featuring some of this modal pocket action, check out Who's Crying Now from the album Escape, and you'll hear it in action. And basically, during Neal's guitar solo, it opens and he's doing this. And does it over and over right there. And that's a very famous guitar solo for sure. But when that opening for that solo begins, it's played over an A minor chord. Right, so you're hearing it first over A minor. Right? And then eventually it moves to an F major chord. And then you're hearing that melody played over F major. Right? And eventually D minor. Hearing that melody played over a D minor chord, and then finally G major, and then you're hearing it played over a G major. So if you haven't heard Who's Crying Now, in a while, check out that song and that guitar solo, but then notice, the guitar solo itself, but also the chords happening behind that guitar solo. For some more of this melodic pocket action, check out the solo from Just the Same Way from the album Evolution, and you'll find, some more of this action. So the chord progression behind this is actually, it's an A power chord to an E over G sharp, and then A power chord to a D over F sharp, like this. It's really important to notice the chords, behind these leads and licks, because you're doing this. Like a little 4-note, or actually 5 notes technically if you add that D note in there, but it's just a little pocket of notes, and it's creating this, melodic, statement at the beginning, and then he usually will do that. I mean, not always, but he would play a melody and kind of start things, and then he would go off into his guitar solo after that. But that's interesting to notice what he plays over that. Right there. And then he just changes. Very simple, but extremely effective. It's Journey. Everybody's still listening to this music today. Okay, next up's the outro solo from Stone in Love. This is also from the album Escape, and this is the outro section, but it's played over some ringing G, power chords. You hear a harmonic, with the bar dive right there, and then you hear Neal, play this very distinct melody. Like that, so it's over G, and it's really interesting because he's basically targeting the major third right there, and that B note instead of B flat, so it's not minor, it's major, and he's doing this. So it's going to feel almost like he's playing out of a dominant pentatonic right there, kind of. Because we're doing that. And then right there, he's basically grabbing that E flat in there too. And then start it again. And then you hear or whatever in there. It's really, really expressive too. But I love that little change in the melody. really, really cool. Definitely check out Stone in Love. That's a great song, and Neal is just ripping all over that one. Except the solo from Still They Ride. This also came from the album Escape, and the chord progression, you know, behind this lead is kind of revealing some things. So it's C major, and then G over B right there, A minor to G, and then F major to E minor, or something like that. But it's just this descending melodic bending phrase, and it's pretty much just all on the B string right there, like this. So it's really interesting over the C, he's just basically grabbing, you know, that whole step bend from D to E. So he's basically targeting like the major third right there over C. So bend that up to E, and then a bend and release. And right there over that, G over B, you know, he's targeting the note D. And then A minor, and he's doing this. Because he started here, and then go to that C, bend that up to D. But right there, after you do the bend, you're going to target that B note, and then, right? And now we're on G. We're going to bend basically this A note up to B, and then down to that F major. You're going to bend this G up to A. And that's really interesting because you're coming down after that bend. But definitely check out that solo from Still They Ride and play along with it. That's super expressive and very, you know, emotive, but it pretty much is just on that one string for the most part. Really cool solo. And last but not least is the opening to the solo Be Good to Yourself from the album Raised on Radio. And I've always loved Neal's vibe during the song. It's a great tune, but Neal's just on fire on this one. I love it. And the chord progression, you know, behind the scenes, it's basically moving from G to D, F to C, right? Just let it ring. Distinctly hear this. Right? And he's playing with so much authority and conviction. I love that solo for sure. But melodically, he's just doing this. And then right there. And then stay there. And I love that little part too, right there. And of course he keeps going into a solo and starts shredding your face off right there. But what an opening, you know, what an attention-getting opening. Like, hey, listen to this. I'm getting ready to play a solo. And Neal Schon has specialized that, you know, in that since technically the late 60s or early 70s. I mean, he's always been just attracting attention. Like, listen to me do this. All right, that's going to wrap this episode of Soloing Secrets with Neal Schon. Definitely a living legend, you know, walking the earth, touring the world, and still highly respected. Journey's still as popular now as ever. I mean, everybody loves Journey. And there's just something about Neal's music, you know, whether it's with Santana, Journey, solo projects, you know, collaborations, studio guest appearances, whatever. Neal always delivers every time. I've never seen Neal play something that was just kind of halfway there. He always, you know, swings for the fences and hits home runs where it's like, man, you know, you just can't miss with somebody like Neal Schon for sure. Anyway, leave some feedback and comments. Please subscribe to Night Lessons, and I'll be back before you know it with more content and material. Thank you.